Captain Kim Taeman watched the massive alien ship approach through the viewport of Orbital Station New Seoul and felt nothing like what the aliens probably expected him to feel. The ship was beautiful in its own way, with smooth curves and glowing panels that pulsed like a heartbeat, but Taeman had seen human dreadnoughts that could crack planets in half, and this thing looked more like a luxury cruise liner than a proper warship. His communications officer Lee Ji-won turned from her console with raised eyebrows and said the aliens were requesting permission to dock and wanted to begin what they called first contact protocols. Taeman nodded and told her to grant permission, but to keep all defensive systems online and ready because you never knew what aliens might consider peaceful behavior. Dr. Park Sora entered the command center, carrying a tablet full of xenobiology data and linguistic analysis programs that had been working overtime since the alien ship first appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. She looked excited in the way scientists always did when they found something new to study. But Taeman noticed she also wore her sidearm, which meant she was taking security seriously. Despite her enthusiasm, the alien ship docked with surprisingly gentle precision, and Taeman had to admit their piloting skills were impressive, even if their ship design seemed to prioritize comfort over combat effectiveness. Admiral Cho Hyun-woo appeared on the main screen, from Earth Defense Command, looking as calm as always. But Taeman could see the slight tension around his eyes that meant the Admiral was ready for anything. Admiral Cho told Taeman to follow standard first contact procedures, but to remember that these aliens had been watching human space for months before making contact and might know more about human capabilities than they were letting on. The docking bay sensors showed 5 alien figures approaching the airlock, and Sora checked her translation software one more time before they opened the doors to meet Earth's first confirmed alien visitors. Ambassador Vexhai stepped through the airlock with 4 companions and immediately began what seemed like a rehearsed speech about peace and friendship between civilizations while projecting holographic images of beautiful alien worlds. The ambassador was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed designed to look trustworthy and non-threatening, but Taeman noticed how the ambassador's companions positioned themselves to cover all angles of the room. Vexhai spoke in accented but clear English and explained that the Galactic Federation had been observing human development with great interest and had decided the time was right for formal contact. Commander Yultar stepped forward, carrying what looked like a gift box, and explained that the Federation always brought presents to new species to demonstrate their advanced technology and peaceful intentions. The first gift was a small device that could apparently translate any language in the galaxy, which made Sora smile politely and thank them while mentioning that human computers had been doing real-time translation for decades. The second gift was a medical scanner that could diagnose and treat most diseases, which prompted Sora to ask technical questions about its quantum resonance patterns that seemed to surprise the aliens. Yultar showed them an energy shield generator that could protect against most known weapons, and Taeman nodded appreciatively, while casually mentioning that human personal shields had been standard military equipment for 20 years. The aliens exchanged glances that suggested they had not expected humans to already possess technology equivalent to their gifts, and Vexhai asked how long humans had been developing such advanced systems. Sora explained that human technology had advanced rapidly once they began seriously exploring space, and that competition between Earth's various nations had driven innovation at an unprecedented pace. She mentioned that humans had developed faster-than-light communication 15 years ago and had been using quantum tunneling for instantaneous data transfer across their growing colonial network. Vexhai seemed genuinely surprised and asked how many worlds humans had colonized, which made Taeman and Sora exchange a look before Sora answered that humans preferred not to discuss their territorial holdings with new acquaintances. The ambassador's expression shifted slightly, and he asked about human defensive capabilities in what he probably thought was a casual way, but Taemin recognized as intelligence gathering. Taemin smiled and said that humans took security very seriously and had established comprehensive defensive networks throughout their space, but preferred to focus on peaceful topics during first contact. Commander Yultar asked to see examples of human technology, and Taeman was happy to show them around the station's public areas while carefully avoiding anything classified. The aliens seemed impressed by the station's size and obvious defensive capabilities, but also increasingly nervous as they realized Human technology was far more advanced than their initial scans had suggested. In the hydroponics bay, HFY asked about human population growth and resource management, which Sora answered by explaining that humans had solved food production challenges decades ago through advanced agricultural techniques. The aliens toured the civilian sections of the station and met human families who treated them with polite curiosity rather than the awe and reverence that HFY clearly expected. From a newly contacted species, children asked the aliens questions about their home worlds and showed them human artwork and music, while their parents chatted casually about interstellar travel and colonial administration. Yultar pulled HFY aside and they spoke in their own language for several minutes, while clearly believing that humans could not understand them. But Sora's translation software picked up every word. The aliens were discussing how humans seemed far more advanced and militarized than their long-range surveys had indicated, and wondering if they had made a mistake in approaching Earth so casually. HFY asked Taimin about human military organization and was told that humans maintained defense forces appropriate to their needs but preferred not to discuss specific capabilities with foreign powers. The ambassador requested permission to visit human military facilities to better understand Earth's defensive posture, and Taimin said he would need to check. With higher authorities, Admiral Cho reappeared on the main screen and politely welcomed the Federation representatives, while mentioning that any tours of military facilities would need to be arranged through proper diplomatic channels. The Admiral suggested that the aliens might enjoy visiting Luna Base, where they could observe human space operations and meet with military academy instructors who specialized in xenological studies. HFY accepted the invitation while clearly hoping to gather intelligence about human capabilities. And Yultar asked if humans had encountered other alien species before. Taimin answered that humans had found evidence of ancient alien civilizations, but had never made contact with any current spacefaring species, which was technically true. What he did not mention was that human deep space reconnaissance had been monitoring Federation activities for years, and that Earth's military planners had already developed contingency plans for first contact. Scenarios Sora offered to arrange transportation to Luna Base, and mentioned that the aliens would find human military doctrine quite interesting from an academic perspective. The Federation delegation accepted the offer while privately wondering what they had gotten themselves into by making contact with a species that seemed completely unimpressed by their technological superiority, as the aliens prepared to depart for Luna Base. Taimin contacted Admiral Cho on a secure channel and reported that the visitors seemed more like scouts than ambassadors. Admiral Cho acknowledged the report and said that General Lee Dai-Yun at Luna Base had been briefed and was prepared to give their guests a proper demonstration of human hospitality. A alien ship undocked from New Seoul, with its passengers having learned far more about humanity than they had expected. But far less than they had hoped. HFY spent the journey to Luna Base, reviewing everything they had observed and trying to understand how humans had developed such advanced technology without the Federation noticing. Commander Yultar studied tactical displays of the orbital station and realized that what had looked like a simple space platform was actually a heavily fortified military installation. As they approached Luna Base, both aliens began to suspect that their mission to evaluate and potentially recruit a primitive species had become something much more complicated and potentially dangerous. General Lee Dai-Yun stood on the observation deck of Luna Base watching the alien shuttle approach and wondered if their visitors understood what they were about to see. The Federation ship looked elegant and peaceful as it settled into the landing bay, but Dai-Yun had spent 30 years studying warfare, and she could see that it carried no real weapons. She had reviewed the reports from Captain Taimin and knew that these aliens expected to find primitive humans who would be amazed by their technology and grateful for their guidance. What they would actually find was the most advanced military academy in human space, where the best tactical minds learned to fight wars that spanned star systems. Ambassador HFY and Commander Yultar emerged from their shuttle accompanied by a new alien called Observer Zeekmol, who carried scanning equipment and seemed focused on gathering intelligence. Dai-Yun welcomed them with military courtesy and explained that Luna Base served as Earth's primary academy for space warfare and strategic studies. She led them through corridors lined with tactical displays showing human defensive positions across 47 star systems, while explaining that the academy trained officers for all branches of Earth's military HFY asked how long humans had been studying space warfare, and seemed surprised when Da-Un answered that systematic military space doctrine had been developed over 2 centuries. The aliens were taken to a classroom where Professor Kang Jae-sung was lecturing advanced students on xenowarfare theory and tactical adaptation for fighting unknown alien species. Jae-sung welcomed the visitors and invited them to observe a training simulation that was already in progress. On the main tactical display, Cadet Oh Min-ho stood at the command console directing a simulated defense against an alien invasion force that bore suspicious resemblance to Federation ship designs. The simulation showed human space with enemy forces approaching from multiple vectors, and Min-ho calmly began implementing defensive strategies that made the Federation representatives shift uncomfortably. Min-ho ordered the evacuation of civilian populations to fortified worlds while simultaneously positioning battle fleets to use asteroid fields and planetary gravity wells as tactical advantages. He deployed stealth reconnaissance units to gather intelligence on enemy capabilities while directing long-range missile strikes against supply lines and command vessels. The alien observers watched in growing horror as Min-ho demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice entire star systems if necessary to protect core human worlds. When enemy forces attempted to capture a human colony, Min-ho ordered the complete destruction of all infrastructure, rather than allow it to fall into alien hands. Yultar asked if this was considered normal tactical doctrine, and Jae-sung explained that humans preferred to deny resources to enemies rather than allow strategic materials to be captured. The simulation continued with Min-ho using guerrilla tactics and asymmetric warfare to harass the invading fleet, while drawing them deeper into prepared kill zones. He coordinated with resistance movements on occupied worlds and used their local knowledge to target enemy weaknesses. While avoiding direct confrontation, Zikamol asked about civilian casualties, and Min-ho calmly explained that human military doctrine accepted collateral damage when the survival of the species was at stake. The cadet demonstrated how human forces would use civilian infrastructure as weapons by overloading power plants and industrial facilities to create devastating explosions. HFY interrupted to ask if humans really trained their officers to destroy their own cities, and Jae-sung confirmed that scorched earth tactics were considered standard defensive strategy. The simulation reached its climax when Min-ho coordinated a massive counterattack that used every available human ship in a desperate gamble to break the alien blockade. He sacrificed smaller vessels in suicide runs to create gaps in enemy formations while directing capital ships to exploit those openings with overwhelming firepower. Yaoisi final phase showed human forces pursuing the retreating aliens and systematically destroying every enemy installation to ensure they could never return. When the simulation ended, Jae-sung asked the Federation representatives what they thought of human tactical doctrine, and their silence spoke volumes. Da-yoon led them to the Military History Museum, where displays showed the evolution of human warfare from ancient battles to interstellar conflicts. Professor Jae-sung explained that humans had been fighting wars for over 10,000 years and had refined the art of organized violence to a level that most species found disturbing. The museum contained weapons from every era of human history and demonstrated how each conflict had driven innovation in military technology and tactical thinking. HFY studied a display about the siege of Stalingrad and asked why humans seemed to prefer fighting to the death rather than surrendering when defeat was inevitable. Jae-sung explained that human culture valued honor and freedom more than survival, and that most humans would rather die fighting than live under foreign domination. The aliens examined exhibits about human wars and began to understand that their species had never encountered anything like humanity's approach to conflict. Zikamol scanned displays about nuclear warfare and seemed shocked that humans had developed planet-destroying weapons within decades of achieving spaceflight. Daeyeon mentioned that modern, human weapons made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers, and that Earth's military had moved far beyond such primitive, destructive devices. They visited the Tactical Planning Center, where human officers studied potential threats and developed strategies for fighting wars against hypothetical alien civilizations. Commander Yultar asked if humans expected to fight other species and was told that military planners always prepared for worst-case scenarios. The planning center displayed detailed analysis of Federation ship designs and tactical doctrines that had been gathered through careful observation of their expansion activities. Vexhai realized that humans had been watching the Federation for years and had already developed specific strategies for fighting their forces. Observer Zekamol asked how humans had gathered such detailed intelligence without the Federation noticing, and was told that human reconnaissance capabilities were classified. Information Dai Yun took them to meet students in the Xenobiology Warfare program, who studied how to fight different types of alien physiology. The students demonstrated knowledge of Federation biology that was far more detailed than anything the aliens had expected humans to possess. Cadet trainers showed how human weapons could be modified to target specific alien weaknesses, and how to exploit environmental factors that might affect different species. Yultar asked if humans planned to use biological weapons and was told that human military doctrine included every possible method of achieving victory. The final stop was the Strategic Simulation Center, where advanced students practiced commanding entire fleets in complex multi-system campaigns. The aliens watched human cadets coordinate attacks across dozens of star systems while managing supply lines, logistics, and diplomatic considerations. Vexhai observed that human strategic thinking seemed to assume that any conflict would escalate to total war between civilizations. Dai Yun confirmed that human military doctrine was based on the assumption that interstellar wars would be struggles for survival, rather than limited political conflicts. As the tour concluded, Zikmol privately contacted Federation headquarters to report that human military capabilities far exceeded their initial assessments. The observer warned that humans appeared to have been preparing for interstellar warfare for decades and had developed tactical doctrines specifically designed to fight more advanced civilizations. Vexhai requested permission to inspect human fleet assets to better understand the level of threat that Earth might represent to Federation security. Dayun agreed to arrange visits to shipyards and fleet bases, while privately wondering if these aliens understood what they were asking to see. Commander Yultar spent the evening reviewing tactical displays and realized that human defensive preparations covered star systems that the Federation considered empty space. The aliens began to suspect that their maps of local space were incomplete, and that humans had been establishing hidden bases throughout the region. As they prepared to depart Luna Base, the Federation delegation finally understood that they were not dealing with a primitive species that needed guidance. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war and might represent the most dangerous military force in known space. General Da'un watched their shuttle leave and contacted Admiral Cho to report that the aliens now knew enough about human capabilities to make informed decisions. She recommended that Earth's military forces be placed on elevated alert status because the Federation would either seek alliance or attempt preemptive action. The choice would depend on whether they understood that humans fought best when cornered, and that any attempt to contain Earth would trigger exactly the kind of total war their cadets had been training to fight. Fleet Admiral Yun Sang-ho received the Federation delegation at Titan shipyards, knowing that what they were about to see would change everything between humans and aliens. The massive construction facility orbited Saturn like a mechanical moon, with hundreds of ships in various stages of completion, filling the void between its industrial modules. Ambassador Vex High emerged from the Federation shuttle with observer Zeekmol and a new arrival called High Counselor Meredith, who radiated the kind of authority that came from commanding entire star systems. Meredith had arrived after receiving Zeekmol's reports about human military capabilities and had come to personally assess whether Earth represented a threat to Federation security. Sang-ho welcomed them aboard the command station and mentioned casually that they were fortunate to visit during a quiet period when only essential construction was taking place. Through the massive viewport, the aliens could see human shipyards that stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, with vessels that dwarfed anything in Federation space. Engineer Lim Hyejin joined the tour and began explaining human shipbuilding philosophy, while pointing out various classes of vessels under construction were mentioned that human ship design prioritized combat effectiveness over comfort, and that every vessel was built to fight and win against superior numbers. The first ship they visited was a patrol cruiser that the aliens initially dismissed as a minor vessel until Hyejin began describing its armament. The cruiser carried enough firepower to level a medium-sized city and possessed shields capable of withstanding direct bombardment from orbital defense platforms. Zikmul scanned the vessel and discovered that its weapon systems incorporated technology that the Federation had classified as theoretically impossible. Yi Jin explained that human engineers had solved the power generation problem by using controlled antimatter reactions that could be scaled up or down as needed. She led them deeper into the shipyard where larger vessels were taking shape, and the aliens began to understand the true scale of human military construction. A destroyer-class ship under assembly was larger than most Federation capital vessels and bristled with weapon systems that seemed designed for fighting massive fleet engagements. Meredith asked about human fleet strength and was told that information about total ship numbers was classified, but that Earth maintained adequate defensive forces. The tour continued to a dreadnought construction bay, where the Federation delegation got their first look at what humans considered a serious warship. The vessel was 2 kilometers long and mounted weapons that could crack planets while carrying enough fighters and support craft to constitute a fleet by themselves. Captain Nam Kite met them aboard his ship the Inchen's Pride and offered to demonstrate some of its capabilities in a controlled environment. The aliens were taken to the bridge where Tactical Officer Lee Yunbi explained human fire control systems and targeting doctrine. Yunbai mentioned that human weapons were designed to engage multiple targets simultaneously across vast distances while maintaining pinpoint accuracy. She activated the tactical display and showed how the dreadnought could coordinate with other vessels to create overlapping fields of fire that no enemy could survive. Kite ordered a demonstration, firing using practice targets, and the aliens watched human weapons systems track and destroy dozens of objects in seconds. The ship's main guns could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed while its missile systems launched warheads that could pursue targets across star systems. Jin explained that human weapons were modular and could be quickly reconfigured to fight different types of enemies with varying defensive capabilities. She showed them specialized ammunition, designed to penetrate energy shields, disrupt alien electronics, and exploit weaknesses in different types of armor. Meredith asked if humans had developed weapons specifically for fighting Federation forces, and was told that human military doctrine required preparation for all possible threats. The aliens were taken to see the ship's defensive systems and discovered that human shields operated on principles that made them nearly impossible to penetrate. Yunbai demonstrated how the shields could be focused to create impenetrable barriers or dispersed to provide coverage for entire fleets. The ship's armor incorporated self-repairing systems and could continue functioning even after suffering damage that would destroy most other vessels. Kitai showed them the crew quarters and explained that human ships were designed for extended campaigns deep in enemy territory. The vessel carried enough supplies to operate independently for years and possessed manufacturing facilities that could produce replacement parts and ammunition. Zikamol asked about human fleet deployment and learned that dreadnoughts like the Inchen's Pride were stationed throughout human space in hidden bases. The aliens discovered that their maps of local space were completely inaccurate, and that humans had been establishing military installations for decades. Sangho took them to see the shipyard's design facilities where human engineers were developing next-generation weapon systems. The research labs contained prototypes for weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics and made current human armaments look primitive. Jin showed them Starkiller torpedoes that could destabilize stellar fusion and planet cracker missiles that worked by disrupting planetary gravity fields. She explained that human weapons designers always assumed they would face technologically superior enemies and had developed strategies for asymmetric warfare. The aliens learned that human ships carried weapons designed specifically for fighting different alien physiologies based on xenobiological research. Yunbai demonstrated targeting systems that could identify and exploit biological weaknesses in real time during combat operations. The Federation delegation was shown manufacturing facilities that could produce thousands of warships simultaneously using automated construction systems. Meredith realized that human industrial capacity far exceeded Federation estimates, and that Earth could build fleets faster than most civilizations could replace losses. Observer Zikmal's scans revealed that the shipyards themselves were heavily defended, and could serve as fortress installations in addition to their construction role. The aliens discovered that human space was essentially one massive military installation disguised as a peaceful colonial expansion. Sang-ho mentioned that Titan Shipyards was only one of several major construction facilities, and that humans maintained backup production capacity throughout their territory. As the tour concluded, Meredith privately contacted Federation High Command to report that human military capabilities represented an existential threat to Federation security. The High Counselor recommended immediate action to contain human expansion before Earth could complete its military buildup. Vex-High asked about human intentions and was told that Earth sought peaceful coexistence, but would defend itself against any attempt at conquest or subjugation. Kite mentioned that human history showed what happened to civilizations that underestimated Earth's military capabilities. The Federation shuttle departed Titan Shipyards with its passengers finally understanding that they had not discovered a potential member species. Instead, they had found a civilization that had spent centuries preparing for interstellar war and possessed the industrial capacity to fight the entire galaxy if necessary. Meredith spent the journey back to Federation space composing reports that would trigger emergency sessions of the High Council. The aliens now knew that any attempt to contain or control humanity would result in exactly the kind of total war that human military doctrine was designed to fight. Sang-ho watched them leave and immediately contacted Earth Defense Command to report that the Federation had seen enough to make informed decisions about their next move. He recommended that all human fleets be placed on maximum alert, because the aliens would either seek immediate alliance or attempt preemptive military action. The choice would determine whether the galaxy entered a new age of cooperation or descended into the largest interstellar war in recorded history. Fleet Admiral Sang-ho began issuing orders to activate hidden defensive systems throughout human space because he suspected the Federation had already made their decision. President Choi Sun-mi stood in the Situation Room beneath Seoul, watching Federation fleets surround Earth. While knowing that the aliens had no idea what they had just triggered, High Counselor Meredith appeared on the main screen flanked by Supreme Admiral Kethvar, whose massive battle fleet had jumped into the Sol system, demanding immediate human surrender. The Federation had decided that humanity represented too great a threat to galactic stability and had come to place Earth under what they called protective custody. Meredith explained that humans would be relocated to designated worlds where they could live peacefully under Federation guidance while their military assets were dismantled. Kethvar added that resistance would be met with overwhelming force and that human ships should stand down immediately to avoid unnecessary casualties. Sunmi listened to their demands with the calm expression that had made her one of Earth's most effective diplomats. But inside she felt the cold fury that came from being threatened by bullies. She activated the emergency broadcast system that would carry her response to every human world and ship throughout known space. The president looked directly into the camera and spoke words that would be remembered for thousands of years across dozens of civilizations. She told the galaxy that Earth rejected Federation demands and that any attempt to subjugate humanity would be met with total resistance. Sun-mi explained that humans had spent centuries learning how to fight for freedom and would never willingly submit to foreign domination. She declared that the Federation had made a fundamental error in assuming that superior numbers guaranteed victory against a species that specialized in warfare. The broadcast ended with Sun-mi's promise that humanity would demonstrate why peaceful species should never threaten those who had mastered the art of war. Across human space, military commanders received activation codes that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. Admiral Park Dong-hyun commanded the Deep Strike Fleet from his flagship, hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of Federation territory. His ships had been positioned throughout enemy space for months, using stealth technology that Federation sensors could not detect. The Deep Strike Fleet consisted of vessels designed specifically for operating behind enemy lines and had been waiting for orders to begin asymmetric warfare operations. Captain Seo Woo Jin received her mission parameters aboard the stealth destroyer that had been shadowing Federation supply convoys for weeks. Her orders were simple and devastating. Engage all Federation military assets throughout their territory, simultaneously. Commander, No Yuna led special forces teams that had infiltrated Federation installations using advanced camouflage and identity modification technology. The teams carried weapons designed to capture, rather than destroy, because humans needed Federation ships and equipment intact at exactly 1800 hours. Earth Standard Time human forces throughout the galaxy received a single coded transmission that activated Operation Deep Strike. Dong Hyun's fleet emerged from stealth and began attacking Federation bases across 200 star systems in perfectly coordinated strikes. Wu Jin's destroyers hit supply depots and communication arrays, while her fighters engaged Federation patrol ships in running battles. Yuna's commandos boarded Federation command vessels and systematically captured their senior officers and tactical databases. The Federation had expected primitive humans to fight a defensive war from their home system and were completely unprepared for attacks throughout their own territory. HFY's fleet around Earth suddenly found itself cut off from reinforcement and resupply, as human forces severed their communication lines. Federation tactical doctrine assumed that their superior technology and numbers would quickly overwhelm any resistance from newly contacted species. Instead, they discovered that human weapons were specifically designed to defeat more advanced civilizations through superior tactics and strategic thinking. Human ships used the galaxy's natural features as weapons, turning asteroid fields into kinetic bombardment systems and using stellar gravity to accelerate projectiles. The Federation fleet learned that humans had studied their ship designs for years and had developed specific countermeasures for every Federation weapons system. Human electronic warfare specialists jammed Federation sensors and communications, while viral programs infected their computer networks. Yuna's boarding teams demonstrated that humans had mastered close-quarters combat in zero-gravity environments where Federation forces were helpless. The aliens discovered that human soldiers were enhanced with technology that made them faster, stronger, and more resilient than any Federation species. Within 6 hours of the first shots being fired, HFY's supposedly invincible fleet was reduced to scattered survivors, desperately calling for reinforcement. The Supreme Admiral found himself trapped aboard his flagship as human commandos systematically captured his bridge crew and tactical officers. Federation High Command lost contact with military installations across their territory, as human forces demonstrated the difference between peaceful expansion and military conquest. Observer Zeke Moll sent frantic reports describing human capabilities that exceeded every Federation projection about primitive species. The humans were not fighting like desperate defenders, but like predators who had lured their prey into a carefully prepared trap. Dong Hyun's deep strike fleet began liberating Federation member worlds whose populations had been integrated through peaceful coercion rather than genuine consent. The Admiral discovered that many species had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge Federation hegemony. Captain Wu Jin coordinated with indigenous resistance movements that had been secretly opposing Federation rule for decades. Her forces provided weapons and training that allowed suppressed species to reclaim their independence. Commander Yuna's intelligence teams extracted Federation databases containing detailed information about every member world and military installation. The data revealed that Federation expansion had been built on the systematic intimidation of weaker species rather than genuine diplomatic agreement. Human forces began broadcasting Federation military communications that showed how the aliens discussed member species as subjects rather than equals. The revelations triggered rebellions across Federation space as civilizations realized they had been manipulated into submission. President Sunmi addressed the galaxy again, explaining that Earth sought liberation, not conquest, and that humans would help any species that chose freedom. Her broadcast was accompanied by tactical data showing how human forces had defeated the Federation fleet without destroying a single civilian target. The message demonstrated that human military doctrine distinguished between enemy combatants and innocent populations. Federation species began declaring independence while requesting human protection against potential Federation retaliation. Meredith contacted Earth, offering to negotiate, but found that humans were no longer interested in talking with a government that had threatened their extinction. Sunmi told the High Counselor that the Federation could surrender unconditionally or face the complete destruction of their military forces. She explained that humans had learned from history that aggressive empires could not be reformed. Only defeated Kethvar's surviving ships attempted to escape Sol system, but discovered that human forces had prepared for every possible contingency. The Federation fleet found itself trapped by mines and automated defense platforms that had been positioned years earlier. As Federation resistance collapsed across the galaxy, alien species began to understand what humans meant when they talked about fighting for freedom. The war ended not with negotiation or compromise, but with the complete military defeat of a galactic empire that had believed peaceful species could never threaten their dominance. Human forces established themselves as liberators rather than conquerors, while the Federation government collapsed under the weight of universal rebellion. The galaxy discovered that sometimes the only way to ensure peace was to demonstrate that aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Ambassador Zhong Hanul stood before the assembled representatives of 43 former Federation worlds and realized that humanity had accidentally become the dominant military power in known space. 6 months had passed since the Federation's failed attempt to subjugate Earth, and the galaxy was still adjusting to a new reality, where humans served as protectors rather than conquerors. The Great Council Chamber on Kepler Station had been built to host the first truly free interstellar government in galactic history, where species participated as equals rather than subjects. Hanul looked out at delegates from civilizations that had spent centuries under Federation control and saw hope in their faces for the first time in generations. Admiral Bae Kyung-soo commanded the Human Liberation Fleet that patrolled former Federation space, helping newly independent worlds establish their own defensive forces. His ships carried the same devastating weapons that had crushed Federation military power, but their mission was protection rather than conquest. Dr. Shin Irie documented the transformation of galactic politics from her research station, where she studied how human military culture was spreading to other species. Her reports showed that former Federation worlds were adopting human concepts of individual liberty and the right to resist oppression. Captain Huang In-soo worked with alien military leaders, teaching them tactical doctrines that could help them defend their independence against future threats. The captain discovered that most species had forgotten how to fight after centuries of Federation protection and needed to relearn the arts of war. Former High Counselor Meredith sat in a refugee camp on the human world of New Geneva, where ex-Federation officials sought protection from their former subjects. The irony was not lost on anyone that the galaxy's former rulers now depended on human mercy for their survival. Hanul opened the council session by reading the Terran Accords that would replace Federation law with a new system based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. The Accords guaranteed every species the right to self-determination and established human forces as neutral protectors who would intervene only when requested. Delegate after delegate spoke about the changes that freedom had brought to their worlds and thanked humanity for ending Federation tyranny. The Vorthak representative described how his people had reclaimed their warrior traditions after 200 years of enforced pacification. The Zilani delegate explained that her species was finally free to pursue scientific research without Federation restrictions on dangerous knowledge. A young Karath spoke about learning to fly combat spacecraft and defend his world instead of relying on Federation protection. Each testimony revealed how the Federation had systematically suppressed the natural development of member species in order to maintain control. Dart Aerie presented her analysis of post-Federation political development and showed how former member worlds were embracing human concepts of democratic governance. Her research indicated that exposure to human military culture was teaching other species to value strength, independence, and the willingness to fight for their beliefs. Admiral Kyung-soo reported on the Liberation Fleet's activities and confirmed that no former Federation worlds had requested a return to their previous status. He mentioned that several species had asked for human military advisors to help them develop their own defensive capabilities. Captain In-soo demonstrated how alien recruits were learning human tactical doctrines and adapting them to their own physiological and cultural characteristics. The Thexians had developed boarding tactics that used their natural camouflage abilities, while the Gorvani specialized in zero-gravity combat. Former Federation species were not simply copying human methods, but were creating their own military traditions based on human principles of total commitment to victory. Hanul addressed concerns from some delegates who worried that the galaxy was becoming too militarized under human influence. She explained that humans had learned from history that peaceful species survived only when they were strong enough to deter aggression. The ambassador pointed out that Federation peace had been maintained through intimidation and that true stability required every species to be capable of defending itself. Several delegates expressed gratitude that humans were teaching military skills rather than simply providing permanent protection. The Nexari representative said that his people preferred to earn their security through strength rather than accept it as charity from a superior power. Hanul announced that human military academies would accept students from any species that wanted to learn advanced tactical and strategic thinking. The program would ensure that future galactic conflicts could not be won through technological superiority alone. Admiral Kyung-soo outlined the mutual defense provisions of the Terran Accords, which committed human forces to assist any signatory that faced external aggression. The agreement was carefully structured to avoid creating a new empire, while ensuring that no single power could dominate the galaxy. ARE presented evidence that former Federation species were developing their own interstellar relationships based on trade cooperation and shared defense rather than subordination. The new galactic order was becoming a network of independent civilizations rather than a hierarchical empire. Former High Counselor Murdith appeared before the Council to formally apologize for Federation crimes and to request asylum for non-combatant ex-officials. The former leader admitted that the Federation had been built on lies about alien intentions and the need for protective guidance. He acknowledged that species, like humanity, had proven that aggressive civilizations could be defeated by those with superior will and tactical thinking. Murdith warned that other empires existed beyond known space, and that the galaxy would need human military leadership to face future threats. Hanul accepted the Federation surrender, but made it clear that human protection came with expectations about how former officials would conduct themselves. Several council delegates spoke about establishing their own versions of human military institutions to ensure that their species would never again be vulnerable to conquest. The Corvani announced plans for a warrior academy that would train their people in both individual combat and fleet tactics. The Pelthani described how they were adapting human special forces techniques to their aquatic physiology. Captain Insu reported that alien students were showing remarkable aptitude for human military doctrine and were beginning to develop innovations that impressed their instructors. The mixing of human tactical thinking with alien capabilities was creating new forms of warfare that would make the galaxy much more dangerous for potential invaders. Hanul concluded the session by noting that humanity had never sought galactic dominance but had been forced into leadership by Federation aggression. She promised that humans would step back from their protective role as soon as other species were strong enough to maintain galactic stability. The ambassador explained that Earth's ultimate goal was a galaxy where every civilization was strong enough to defend itself and free enough to choose its own destiny. Admiral Kyung-soo added that human forces would continue patrolling former Federation space until local defense networks were fully operational. The Liberation Fleet would then transition to a rapid response role, intervening only when requested by legitimate governments facing external threats. Dr. Airy projected that the transition to full galactic independence would take approximately 20 years as former Federation species rebuilt their military capabilities. Her analysis suggested that the new system would be more stable than Federation hegemony because it was based on strength rather than intimidation. As the council session ended, delegates from dozens of worlds began planning the future of a galaxy where freedom was protected by those strong enough to defend it. Hanul watched them leave, knowing that humanity had fundamentally changed the nature of interstellar politics by proving that peaceful expansion could be stopped by superior military force. The galaxy would never again tolerate the kind of benevolent tyranny that the Federation had represented, because too many species now understood the value of independence. Former High Counselor Murdith remained in the empty chamber, contemplating how his ancient civilization had been defeated by a species that most galactic powers had never heard of until 6 months ago. The Federation's greatest mistake had been assuming that advanced technology automatically translated into military superiority. They had learned too late that humans specialized in the one thing that no amount of peaceful Development could replace the knowledge of how to fight and win wars against superior enemies.